Hello. Welcome to Evolve Consciousness. My name is Chris Nelson. Just a moment. Sorry about that. Door was open and my son's going to bed a bit late. And yeah. All right. So, hello, Marcella in the chat. So this is the first episode of what I've called the Great Work Launchpad, and so that's a name I came up with as like an idea for doing the great work and helping people launch. Hence the image you saw early on. So I'm using StreamYard for the first time. There you go, that image. So the Great Work Launchpad, the idea of helping people get on the platform of them being a rocket ship and then positioning themselves so that they take off and they get involved in doing the great work. So yeah. Now, what is this going to be about? So if anyone wants to join in, I'm just going to put the link in, and it can be a mix of me talking and other people who have anything they want to talk about. Now, it's the first time I'm using StreamYard as an admin, and I'm trying to figure out where this bloody link is. But yeah, I don't know where it is. Is it share your referral link? No, that's not what it is. Present or invite. Invite a guest. There we go. Okay. Whew. Let's post that in and see how that goes. Okay. So if anyone wants to come on, you can ask questions, your concerns, your apprehensions, or tips, comments, anything like that. And I figure I'll do like about an hour and keep it shorter than the other presentations of an hour and then an hour discussion. So just an hour and see how it goes, and I guess have more content for the next Great Work Launchpad episode 2, whenever that comes around. So, as I was mentioning, the Great Work Launchpad. So, getting people to launch themselves into the great work. So, for anyone who's not too aware of what the great work is, well, the great work has to do with doing the work of ending evil, of ending immorality that's taking place in the aggregate so that we can actually reach true freedom. Obviously, that's not going to be done in an instant. It's going to be a gradual process. And the more people that do it, the quicker it goes. So if it's not done by many people, well, then the goal will never be achieved, because the great work is that work of ending evil, of ending slavery. And if you've been following the Law of Freedom presentation, well, what the condition we find ourselves in is a condition of enslavement, and it's a condition of covert enslavement, but enslavement nonetheless. It's not the overt kind, in your face with ball and chains, shackles, people being forced to work or else they get beatings, and the only thing provided to them is food and maybe shelter, water, etc. And they don't get a salary. They don't have a way to agree that what they're they're doing as work. They just have to do it. But if you look at our way of living, how much freedom do you actually have to not choose to get a career or get a job? How are you going to survive otherwise? Because if you try to go own some land or have a house or something, well, all the land is owned and you can't just live off of it. So if you want to try to make your own way and live by the fruits of your labor, that's not very possible. You'd have to do it illegally. And if you, I guess, get caught, then the state would punish you. So that would probably be, since they would take everything you have, probably demand some fiat currency as a punishment that you probably won't have if you're just doing everything yourself, and maybe throw you in prison. So it's the way we live isn't very free. On top of that, when you do, I guess, you play the game, well, you're going to have a job, you're going to pay taxes, even if you're not paying a job. And even if you're not paying taxes and you do have a job, somehow, and you do something in exchange for a fiat currency, you're going to buy things like food and you're going to be paying a sales tax. So either way, there's going to be aspects of the system that are going to be fed by you and how you choose to interact in everything that has to do with the system. So when you're paying taxes for things, or you're told what you're not allowed to do, and they're making you do things, those are all forms of ownership upon you. And because they're telling you what you're not allowed to do with your body. So if someone's telling you what you aren't allowed to do with your body, then by any other name, that's just slavery. So I've gone into this in the science of morality, and you can learn a lot more about it. But here we're to talk about the great work. And in the science of morality, part 4, morality, I've gone into great work, lower level, which is talking about all the evil, everything that happens that's evil, which is a new flavor every day, every week, something new happening. And the higher level is talking about moral education. So that's the highest part of the great work, is moral education. Or talking about things that can get people to accept morality. And that would be things like understanding themselves, self-knowledge, consciousness, cognitive biases, doing the shadow work. So part of the great work is also, hey, there's Brendan. Let's see it's not ban, it's not kick. How do we, oh, click add to stage. There we go. That's the right button. Hey, Brendan.
Hey, what's going on, Chris?
How much fumbling my way through my episode here.
Yeah, hope you enjoying StreamYard.
Yeah. First time using it. I got used to, I guess, Video Ninja in OBS, and now I'm not using that. So yeah, just explaining the beginning parts of what the great work is. Do you have anything you want to add on the great work? I know there's a lot we could talk about, but if you have anything to shoot out, go for it.
Yeah, I know a lot of people always interpret it as more of a, rhetoric stage, in the form of, yes, of outputting and trying to, help influence others. But initially, it starts from a internal change, like the internal shift, that internal friction, that internal, shakeup is what initially, starts that to, make you want to go on that path of knowledge. One thing that kind of helped me was when I realized how ignorant I was, it it kind of encouraged me to want to go down my own journey, which led me toward great teachers work, like your work and Mark Passio's work and all the other great teachers. So yeah, it really does start internally, then it starts to radiate and manifest itself, like outwardly. It's almost like a trivium process, in and of itself that starts, internally, and then you take in all that knowledge. There's this internal change, just internal transformation. Then you really have that love to where you want to, start to educate and put what you've come to know back out there so other people can learn and study and hopefully put back out there what they've learned so we can all come to know and share this knowledge of trying to end slavery, trying to bring about more freedom.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I was getting at right before you joined. Is before what we do when we put out the content. A lot of it has to do with getting people to do that inner work, and there is no outer work without first doing that inner work, like you said. That's an absolute requirement because if you don't work on yourself, then um, well, there's that misalignment aspect of being a hypocrite, where you're going to talk about things that you're not doing yourself. So you gotta do that inner work, that inner transformation, that inner healing, where you have to get united within your own consciousness, those thoughts, emotions, and actions being on the same page, where you understand it and you feel it's right, and then you do what you think and you care about what's right, and then you act on it. So first part is that the science of morality, part four, morality, where I divided morality up into two parts. The the first part is the apophatic path of you not doing those immoralities yourself, so you stop participating in the creation of evil. And if you're still going to be participating in the creation of evil and you're going to try to teach other people, engage in that part of not tolerating the creation of evil by trying to teach about how to end evil, but you're still participating in it, then you're not sending the right message, even though someone might not know that you're still doing it. You know it yourself. And yeah, it's not very healthy either, because then you're being like two-faced and hypocritical, and you're not honoring your word. You're not ma'akeru. You're not being true of voice. You're saying to do one thing while you do another.
Yeah, the disharmony and the misalignment internally. Yep. So, and then too, another health component of the great work is the conscious parenting aspect of it, and the responsibility that comes along with that. That's that's a part that gets left out a lot of times in conversation. So, shout out to all the conscious parents and our the conscious parents, who are out there who are trying to, teach more education to their kids and to the next generation.
Yeah, for sure. That's crucial. Probably the most important um, job, the right livelihood job that you don't get paid for. So
Yeah.
it's one of the most difficult but rewarding, and it's one of the best things we can do to try to end evil and end slavery, is by bringing people into the world where we are going to have the most influence over their upbringing and truly raise them, as opposed to how we were raised. We weren't fully raised. We were raised by people who were unraised, so we weren't fully raised, and we had to raise ourselves through the work of strangers who put out information that helped us raise ourselves. And it comes back to that disharmony and being a hypocrite. If you're going to be trying to raise children, but you're not raised yourself, then you're going to be failing, because you're not morally raised, and that's the crucial aspect is being morally raised yourself in order to raise moral individuals. And as I was saying, that's an important aspect because this is, I view it as a multi generational effort in doing the great work and ending evil, ending slavery, because it's not going to happen. Probably not in my lifetime. And
Yeah,
the yeah, the influence of the work of influencing others, it's very difficult. As Passio says, it's the hardest work out there. So we could debate on is parenting, doing conscious parenting, the hardest work, or is doing the great work the hardest work. They're both difficult, but it's
yeah.
very. Go ahead.
I put both of them, underneath the same umbrella. The more education, as far if you're doing it, from a greater perspective, as far as trying to reach more minds by way of internet, education or doing the conscious parenting. I mean, hell, both are going to be hard. And mind you, I'm not a parent, so but uh, you know, everyone has said how hard it is, and especially in today's world where morality and consciousness seems to get thrown out the window. And that's why it's so important to install these correct principles and programs. That way, when it comes to making decisions later on in life, they can make the correct decisions, hopefully, and not having to, unlearn these incorrect behaviors.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so that conscious parenting. Um, Getting back to what I was saying, the if we're if we're going to be trying to educate in others and influence them when they're already raised, well, they're falsely raised. I was going to say raised when they're already brought up in a way where they've been conditioned by the condition of society, and they perpetuate that, and um, they're not awakened even at an initial level, and they believe in all the most of the bullshit.
Yeah,
They're trying to break through that calcified ego, and that programming is very difficult to get people to even begin to question what they think they know is true and the hardness of that false reality. So you getting people have to awaken themselves, and you can put that information out, but there has to be a catalyst that, and it can often be suffering and chaos where they're maybe at a low point in their life, and then they're
yeah,
trying to find things to elevate themselves because they realize how low they are, and that's the distraction of modern living. And if people have things going well for them personally, a good job, they have the woman or the man, and maybe they have a family, and then they go out to events and everything. Well, everything seems fine to them, and so they don't have that suffering catalyst to get them to awaken themselves and be aware of the falsity of reality. So breaking through that is a very difficult thing. When we all awaken, I'm sure, me, it was 9/11, and I was at work trying to get people to understand 9/11 and question things, and it doesn't go well. People, they reject you, and family members think you're crazy or whatever. So it's really hard to break through. But if you have children, you can get them when they're young. As I don't know if it was Hitler or whatever. All those evil people who say we got to get them when they're young and indoctrinate them when they're young. Well, we can educate people on truth and how to think properly when they're young, and then, well, we've created a person and formed them into the world in the proper way so that they're actually raised. And that's one more person that can do the work potentially. Hopefully they seek that inspiration. Yeah, they aspire towards that great work as well, that arduous task. But when you get them young, then you're more easily able to have them on the right path from the get-go, as opposed to getting people who are on the wrong path and admit getting them to see that they're on the wrong path and admit that they're on the wrong path, to then desire to go on the right path. And yeah, it's a more difficult thing to do for other people than, I guess, for your own children.
yeah. It's easier to do it the correct way, the right way, the first time. compared to trying to get it the second time, and just the hopes of people, how, like you say, snapping out of it. It's going to be so much more harder, because to shatter one's false reality is like a life or death, health situation. And that's why a lot of people want to continue to stay hell attached to it, because it's like a death that they don't want to let go of, they don't want to face. So yeah, doing it the correct way the first time, as far as health conscious parenting, being being a good parental, guardianship whenever you are around kids, being a good, steward, and trying to install those moral principles so whenever you can.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you have friends or family members and you do hang out with them and they have children, well, you can be an influence to those in addition to your own. Or if you don't have children of your own, then you can influence. And yeah, it's important to get at the young. And the Greater Arcanum mentioned, and give me the boy until he is 7, and I will show you the man. I don't know who quoted that, but where that quote's from, but that's the point. Those formative years, as Passio stated in the programmability of the human being, those are those formative years where we're installing, doing the formatting for the hard drive, the conditioning of the operating system for how to operate in life, and those are those building blocks. But yeah, I guess there's limitations at the age there, but can always start explaining things at whatever age level they're at and trying to get these concepts understood. But I guess they won't understand it at a higher order level because that takes higher order conceptual abilities that those 5-year-old, like my 5-year-old, doesn't have that ability yet, but he can understand some
Yeah,
stuff that I try to
yeah.
get him to understand.
They can actually understand a lot more than we think they can. Um, it's it's amazing being around how young kids, and like how much you'll learn from. Um, it's just a wonderful experience just to see them and just to help learn from them. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's being a father of 2 boys. It's a delight when they're young, and then they get older, and then it becomes more of a like the terrible 2s and 3s, and then that becomes more of a a pain in the ass and the chaos, and
Yeah,
they're developing their ego. That's
yeah,
the first phase is just like learning to interact in the world, and then it's mine and my stuff and me, and then
yeah,
there's the development of that stuff, and then you get them into the ego plus other egos, the ego plus the sociological aspect of like, well, you got to share and get
yeah,
along and yeah,
yeah.
make
You got to
friends.
learn your boundaries, rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, you were gonna say something.
Nah, hell, I'm just thinking like all the fascinating psychology that, um, because this is what Jordan Peterson talked about a lot of in his earlier work. Because that's how I came across his work was through your material, and I was just kind of putting all that together. This was in like his early like 2010 stuff that you had connected to some of your earlier work. Because I came across his stuff, like back when he was more knowledgeable, and I was like, man, like this dude was saying some great stuff with psychology and mythology and like deeper, like health cult things. So just putting all that together.
Yeah, I found him. Yeah, before. I guess I hadn't heard of him anywhere else, but I was researching like my idea for one of my presentations, higher consciousness apotheosis, in terms of not becoming the god, but a god of your
Yeah,
more transcendental powers of consciousness, of the ability to create in higher potentials and higher creative capacities in alignment with the good, the object of the good, instead of half-assing it or ignorantly. and not obviously not choosing the path of evil and creating in that higher potential of evil, but choosing the higher potential of good. And
Yeah.
the idea I had, I think it was around, I was like trying to, I think my idea was about the gods and how they are representations of ourselves. So I was like trying to find validation for the conclusion I came to, and how we were anthropomorphizing and projecting aspects of ourselves outwards.
Yeah.
And I found one of his, I think it was maps and meanings videos, and it must have been right before he started to get popular because of the transgender or whatever stuff that made him popular in
Yeah.
2016. And I
Yeah.
found him like just searching for stuff online, and I was like, oh wow, yeah, he has a lot of history of the philosophical movements, um, existentialism, nihilism, and all the stuff. I've
Yeah.
been doing summaries on some of those great early philosophers, so it's good material.
Yeah. Yeah. Hell, I had went and found like all of his maps and meanings from one of his college lectures, and like I went through all of that, like all of that years of material that he had for online. Yeah, it was good material. Um, some required material, from what how I say, but yeah, it was right before he blew up, and yeah, kind of yeah, whole different story.
Yeah, yeah. Not many people, I guess. Well, I guess people probably looked into his older stuff, but there's probably a lot of people who haven't even looked into his university lectures, and
Yeah,
they only follow like his more modern talks about things.
yeah.
Have I ever heard of the book The Saturn Myth or the Electric Universe? What are your thoughts on the metaphorical representation of myth? So I've heard of the electric universe, looked into it very cursorily. So I know there's the works by Walter Russell. I think a lot of that is based off of. I have not read into it. I'm more into. I'm myopic and pigeonholed on morality and consciousness to get to morality, and all those things that have to do with morality. I'm very one-sided, and I recognize this about myself, and I don't much look into all of the many other things that are interesting. So the electric universe is an interesting hypothesis and alternative to how the, I guess, Einsteinian or Newtonian views of the universe more having favoring how the there's like an electrical basis. I've looked into it maybe over 10 years ago, so I don't even remember that much about it. Brandon, have you ever looked into electric universe or the Saturn myth?
Yeah, um in my earlier stuff, but once I kind of came across morality and like higher consciousness, I kind of put more focus on that because that's where I honestly felt, like more chains lock, lied. And there's a lot of interest in, that goes into, the whole, stuff, electric universe, and a lot of good, videos, but not saying there's no, validation, not saying it's not important, but it does kind of pull you hell away from the moral aspect and like the higher consciousness stuff and the stuff that we can prove and, end slavery and, you know, to work about, like ending evil. And that's kind of where I put my focus and like kind of have been for the past 8 to 10 years, so a lot of that stuff sounds interesting. It's still in my mind, and I would like to figure, some of that stuff out, one day and learn about it. But the moral aspect and, the higher consciousness, to me, like that's the priority, and that's where the focus should be at. So, Chris,
Absolutely,
yeah,
100%.
hell, I can understand, like why you would answer that way because I'm the same way.
Yeah, because everything, of everything that there is to talk about, what's going to actually bring you freedom, what's going to actually remove the slavery that gets you the freedom, not necessarily in your personal life doing, you know, homesteading or whatever, farming and all this stuff. Um, yeah, so that's why I'm focused on that, because that's what I care about is morality. Like, I haven't been a moral person all my life. You know, I'm sure a lot of us have moral failings, but the reason, you know, Passio's work attracted me so much was because of the focus on morality, and that's why I went into being a non-carnist and leaving the animals alone. Um, when I heard his podcast 36, that's where he first did like his brief summary on natural law, where he has the PDF. So it was like his first natural law presentation based on a presentation he gave somewhere in Pennsylvania in like 2010. So I probably came across it in 2011 or 2012. Um, yeah, probably 2011 or something. And, you know, in that presentation, he just mentions morality related to all sentient beings. And right there, I knew right away what he was saying, that he wasn't just talking about sentient human beings or things like that. And that's when I started to look into things myself, like maybe a year or two, yeah, a year later. Um, Took me a while. I didn't want to face it, but the morality aspect, I've always wanted, not always wanted to, but since my awakening in 2016, that's the beginning of your spiritual journey, your knowledge quests, and then eventually it's supposed to lead you to more moral self-actualization. And when I heard him say that, I realized that, yeah, I got to do more to for myself to be more moral. And yeah, eventually I did more research, and then I wasn't always listening to his podcast every week. And then I came back like a year later and listened to more or something, or 6 months or 8 months later. And I did that for several years. But in the meantime, I was still researching other things and looking into the the veganism videos and stuff. And so that developed it for me. But having this care for morality itself, of wanting to be better, because that's what a lot of this is, even before you even get to morality. This self-improvement, self-improvement's a big thing, even in our modern age, and the new age and all that stuff, and pop psychology and all that. A lot of people are into this self-improvement and self-betterment, but they lack the understanding of the objective moral dimension to it. So they're all like reading into these books and all these popular books, and it's on um books that end up on Oprah Winfrey or whatever at the time, and Chatter Show, or all these talk shows and all these popular books. And people are playing into the idea of self-improvement, but they're focusing on, like, the trap of meditation, and just like, oh, well, feeling better, making more wellness for yourself as a psychological state, or going to the gym and physical fitness. And but they're missing like the big prize, and the big light at the top of the mountain that's shining down, and they're not even seeing it. They're just looking at, like, those things are good for like your personal self in some aspects. I guess I would say it as a lower self, because it's not dealing with that highest potential of moral self improvement. But so there's I just wanted to bring that in, where we're talking about the great work and getting started. So one of the first things you got to do is the working on yourself, and a lot of people are into that, but they're missing the mark. They don't have their, I guess, the real target in sight of where they're supposed to be going. They're not coming across the information that's allowing them to gain that epiphany of that aha moment of, oh yeah, well, that's actually the highest place that I should be aspiring to, and how do I get there, and what can I do to reach that pinnacle?
He- yeah, great points. Um, you said that was around. You said you came across Mark's work around 2010.
I think it was 2011, um, because I was more into like, well, the other stuff I found. I found like the Pharmacratic Inquisition by Jan Irvin, and then I got into that, and I bought like Allegro's books, The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, and getting
That's
into
a
like the
name.
history and stuff.
Yeah,
And then he was interviewed, and like it was Gnostic Media
yeah,
podcast, like 40s, I think, or the 70s or something. Maybe it was probably the 40s. And I don't know where I came across it. I didn't listen to much of the Gnostic Media podcast itself, maybe like one or two episodes. But when I saw that, and it was like, I forget what the title was, but it was about, the trivium and how this was the most guarded of all the ancient teachings. So I was into all that, like, oh, the whole wonderment of, it's ancient. Oh, it's so much better because it's ancient. This
yeah,
appeal to ancestry that we all get trapped in, I'm sure. And just because it's ancient, it's better. Just because it's part of our ancestors. The people long ago did it. Oh, it must be better, or whatever diet they allegedly did back there, which is
yeah.
bullshit. And all this information. Oh, well, the older the information is, the better it is. But that's nonsense. But that attracted me, and I was like, wow, this information is like amazing. And then I eventually got into his podcasts. Go ahead, what you're getting into.
And then you also said you started a waking up thing doing September 11th.
On the no, not in September 11, but about that material,
Oh,
right?
oh,
The
yeah. Because I
September
was gonna say,
9/11
darn.
material. Yeah, in
Yeah.
2016, 2006 is when it happened for me. No,
Okay.
not
Yeah. Because I was gonna say,
not
damn.
that early.
Yeah, you started early.
2006, yeah, but not 2001. No, I'm not that
Okay.
early.
I was like, damn, man, you started real early. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Because my journey started late 2012, 2013. Um, just through, hell, I played a lot of video games, man. Like a shit ton of video games. Played a lot of Final Fantasy. That was actually one of the video games that possibly installed a lot of these arts type things, like within me, because they
Final
had a lot
Fantasy
of,
7 or what? With
yeah,
Sephiroth
yep,
or whatever
yep,
his name is there.
yeah, Final Fantasy 7. Hell, I remember when that game came out. Yeah, I was in sixth grade. Hell, I had it on PlayStation. Never really finished the game because it was so long. But yeah, I went back and played it. But yeah, Final Fantasy 7 left an imprint in my mind. Because when Brandon Martin and the other dude, can't remember his name
Francesco
right now.
Sani.
Yeah, yeah, they did a video about Final Fantasy 7, and it was on point. Talking about these pretty much the same things that we're talking about. You have this corporation, pretty much like government, who's evil, who's destroying the planet and trying to enslave people. Then you have these archetype, characters who, are labeled as terrorists and, villains, and they want to stop evil. So yeah, played a lot of video games and started playing Call of Duty. And it was just through like this pattern, this recognition. I'm like, man, I'm buying the same game over and over each year. So, you know, it was literally like I became aware of a pattern. Then I did something that was outside of my normal pattern and just decided to go down this rabbit hole about the um the um the school shooting around 2013, hell, late 2012.
Sandy Hook.
Yeah, yeah, went down that rabbit hole and it just opened up a whole bunch of rabbit holes because this was around like people have to understand this was around the time where you can go on YouTube and it was like no censorship. So you can go on YouTube and just search videos and you would get a lot of videos of just like raw like raw information. It wasn't what it is now, to where like now it's so filtered. Like back then, conspiracy videos will like pop up on like the main stage, so it was a good source to at least, check out, you know, videos. So like after that, I went through like 2 years of just binge watching every conspiracy video to the point to where like I was in such a reactive stage, and I intuitively knew that there was occult knowledge, like just something internal just let me know, you know. And I was never a intuitive person. Hell, I was just dumb, kind of like a nihilist. Hell, good in the sports, like very good in the sports. Hell, I have like the Aries kind of archetype because that's my like like my sun sign. I'm very tall, very good. Hell, like in sports, that's why I kind of excel at umpire. Like always pretty much had good health. Never really had to exercise. Um, taller. Yeah, I'm taller than 99% of the people on the planet. Most people don't really look to me to like cause problems. So I have like a very Aries
You're a
kind of archetype.
Nephilim. Get him.
Yeah, yeah. Hell, I'm only 6'6" though. But yeah, hell, I just intuitively knew that there was like deeper knowledge. And I just like made a call to the universe. It was like, there has to be more to life. There has to be more, than just in this hamster wheel of conspiracy and fear. And I just like made a call, like just made a plea, like just open myself up to the universe. I'm like, like just send me a sign, just send me, something. And in a couple of weeks to a couple of months later, it did, in the form of me just checking out the InfoWars Hell Nightly News with Leanne McAdoo. And I see this dude who just has this different energy. He just has this serious, like this energy I have never seen before. Never, and like you can feel it. Like this dude was just so serious. And it was Mark Passio. And he talked for 30 minutes. And it was that 30 minutes of him just explaining shit had was so deeper than my 2 years of just going through of conspiracy. He made so much more sense to what he was saying and talking, about symbolism, that I had to figure out who is this dude. And that was like the universe kind of, saying like, hey, if you want to learn, here's, like here's a cookie. It's up to you, and went to his website, saw his natural law of presentation, sat down through it the first time, one sitting. It was so much information. It was like it was literally like being put in a coma with how much information he had put in an 8-hour presentation. It was like fighting Mike Tyson in a knowledge battle and just getting, like clobbered for like the 4 rounds. It was so much knowledge in that one presentation. And I sat down and watched it in one sitting. So yep. And that's what led me to his work. And of course, his work led me to everyone else's work. Cause I went through like a lot of the material he posted, the books, a lot of the other, presenters, a lot of the slides, a lot of the other, podcasts. So it wasn't like, I just took in his knowledge. It was other individuals' work. And then I came across your work because I was like, man, I wonder if Chris, has been recognized, have I marked? Because I think I came across your work around 2016, like 2015, 2016. And then I was like, man, this guy makes, he makes some good slides. Then I came back like a year later. Then I came back a third time. And this was during COVID when you had came back and was putting out, more stuff. But yeah, that's how I came across, how natural law and morality through Mark's work. And Mark's work, helped brought me toward, yours work, and of course Manly P. Hall's work. Then of course meeting other individuals on the network, and hell, I would just always, like type in natural law in like in searches to see, like what other people who were talking about it just to see what they was, bringing to the conversation. But that's, how I got kind of started, with this. And I just knew that like morality, like once Mark introduced it the way that he did, and I thought about it for so long, like it was like on my mind. It just made so much sense. It was like that missing piece that was the glue that literally held everything together as far as some of the other stuff, how that we had learned, like how like you hear about, have philosophy and psychology and like all of these metaphysical stuff. But like when you boil it down to the moral, you know, actions and behaviors that we put out, that's where like a lot of people missed it, you know. A lot of people put out great material, but they was missing that moral, glue, that moral foundation. So when he brought that, it just made so much sense. And I didn't just like believe what he said. It took me years. Like hell, I went through what he said and like all of the resources, and I was literally like trying to find as much like as I could to to validate that, like going through the trivium process. It took me years, you know.
Yeah, that's a good story. I think this first episode will be good to it's good. It's good to. I'm glad you came on instead of just me talking, and we give an introduction of like how we got into our awakening. And I think that's well, it's definitely anyone who's going to come across our work. Um, they're already, they already have their at least crusty eyes open, waking up a little bit, and they're aware of like the conspiratorial aspect and how things don't make sense. That's all we've went through. That is how you can have an intuitive feeling that there's something wrong with the world, that things aren't right, and then you're trying to put your finger on it and trying to understand it more, and that's what begins our journey because we want to know more. We finally wake up and realize that, oh well, this isn't right. What else is going on? Because that's what it was for me in the summer of 2006. You know, with my roommates, they we watched Loose Change, and Loose Change didn't do it for me. I've al- I have long since, before my actual like awakening into the second life of starting to care and going after knowledge, the knowledge quest as I called it back then. Call it the spiritual path, call it what you want. But even before that, I was into like the the concept of conspiracy theories. When you watch movies, there's the movie with Mel Gibson and Julia Roberts, Conspiracy Theory, and there's these things like Julia Roberts had the Pelican Brief, or Tom Cruise and The Firm. Whenever there was like all these like nefarious things, these conspiratorial things going on, that was like I always like, wow, yeah, those movies always interested me, of like these evil people doing evil things and then someone's trying to stop them. I was always into
Right.
these moral movies, and even action movies like Steven Seagal, and like getting kicking ass against the bad guy and all this stuff. My dad was into that, so I got into it because my dad was into all the Steven Seagal, Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Van Damme, and all this
Chuck
stuff.
Norris, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's always about all the movies. Pretty much, probably 90, 95 of the movies all have a theme of good versus evil, and in some capacity, children's movies, the majority of them. So I was always been drawn to that and the conspiratorial aspect. But Loose Change, it didn't do it for me. And then a few months later, I was on a torrent site, and I don't know. I guess I was getting bored of like the stuff, and then there was like a documentary. Oh, Alex Jones, Terror Storm, and I looked up like the description. I was like, whoa, this looks really interesting. And I watched. I could only get halfway through because about halfway through, there's the John Yoo memo, where there's the memo of authorizing the torture of children in order to get parents to confess, and that just hit me like boom. That was just way too much for me. I was like, what this is actually going on in the government, where they're openly advocating for the torture of children just to derive confessions, whether they're true or not.
Yeah.
And I had to turn it off, and I only finished the second half a week, 2 weeks later, because it was just like so much for me. But that was it right there. That's what got me to care, to be like, whoa, what the fuck is going on with this world? Like, and then, well, what else is going on? So I got into AJ for like 9 months, and then I moved on. And there's Ike and all this other stuff, and then you go on your journey wherever you go. But that's what started it for me. And yeah, but one of the things I relate to being awake, I remember telling someone who I was friends with at the time, his dad. I don't know how I had the contact online or something, and on Skype. I don't know. They asked me like what I was doing, and I'm like, I'm on a knowledge quest, and then they just laughed at me. It's funny that the ignorant people laugh at you, and they say, I didn't say spiritual quest because I didn't know about that, or the spiritual path, but that other terminology. But just the knowledge quest was enough to have some mockery, like what I guess, like
Yeah.
in their
Like
mind is like, what, you're going after knowledge, you're on a
like
quest for more knowledge, where
yeah,
how
like why would you
arrogant are
ever
you thinking you
yeah.
can learn things or something, like I don't
It's
know
like
what
why
the
would
fuck.
you ever need knowledge?
Like,
We have
why would you need
smartphones,
that?
yeah, like why would you ever, like want to know anything?
Yeah,
No, that's
but that's what I
uh
used to call it back then, when I after Terror Storm. That's what did it for me. That's what awakened. And I was in like not immense suffering, but I had gone through like a breakup of like a high school girlfriend, and wasn't the best person. That's when I started caring more about improving myself and like psychologically becoming a better person. And then, you know, then eventually find Passio. And that's where the gears really, things kick into high gear. And until then,
yeah.
I'd say until you find Passio, your gears are not shifted high enough. Unfortunately, it takes Passio. And then we're trying to do similar stuff with what we're doing. But he definitely laid the trail for much of what we're doing, and just the way about him. I guess he's more extrovert in the way he talks, and he's more like he mentioned since he was a teenager, he's been in bands and up front and in the public, so he had more practice, and the I guess the colloquialisms and the formality of like talking on the microphone and everything. He was more habituated to it, and plus like the hundreds and thousands of books that he read, and coalescing that, he's had a lot of the knowledge. So we all owe a lot of where we are right now. It wouldn't be. I know I wouldn't be where I am without Mark Passio's teachings, and that's what we're trying to do. Is in the great work is we're trying to add. He added a great deal to the voice of truth, and we're all trying to add our own decibels to that voice of truth, compared to the voice of the lies and the voice of all the bullshit that you find online in articles, or certainly on TikTok and other social media, on Facebook, and the videos on YouTube. A lot of it is gaming, or politics, left or right, or economics, this or that, and it's all superficial, lower level stuff in terms of the machinations of whatever flavor of the day is the next news item to focus your attention on, or completely not even pay attention to that and just play games and try to entertain yourself and watch movies and TV shows and just focus your
Yeah.
life on that.
Escapism.
Yeah, escapism. They got us pretty good on that. So we gotta suffer a bit. Like I said, I wasn't in the best position. That's what I guess I didn't have a lot going in my life, and that's why eventually I was interested by something else, and then you get interested by other stuff. And so when we're doing the great work, that's what we're trying to do, is put out information to enlarge that voice of truth to combat the voice of the lies or the bullshit, and that other people can potentially come across it. Because I know I've had a few people on videos or on my site, they didn't know about Passio. So I know that I've reached people and have influenced people who haven't even known about Passio. And if I hadn't, and I think I like told them about Passio or something, but you know, we gotta try to put people onto, when you're starting, you're not gonna have a lot of work. And maybe after 10 years you'll have a lot. Um, but even then, Passio's still got a lot of worthwhile material. Put people onto Passio to go through it at their own pace. And yeah, that my point was that even as one person, you can influence people who haven't even heard of the people that you yourself learned from and that you're basing a lot of your
Yep.
material on, like I am. And so you as one individual can have an impact in another person's life. You can have an influence. And that's the importance of launching yourself and lighting a fire under your ass like the rocket ship and trying to do something to try to influence people and get them to pay attention to something other than the garbage that's out there, and maybe learn something from you, and then they can do the same as what you're doing. Hey Rick, how's it going? And yeah, so Greater Arcanum asked, what's your guys' top 3 Mark Passio videos or teachings right now? Also, Chris, what would be your personal oracles you could recommend people to read through first? Top 3 Mark Passio, the Natural Law Seminar in 9 hours, definitely number 1 probably. I like the Streetwise Spirituality, and I guess the Natural Law documentary. And for my articles, oh no, you can go to the archive on whether it's like my work at the top of my site. Then you can go to archive and you can look at the bottom. So they're chronologically newest at the top, oldest at the bottom. And you can just look at the titles and try to pick off something that interests you. But my articles, I would say my videos, when I started to do more content, I guess Truth is Love. That one started off, Truth is Love. That one started off as an article, and then I made it into audio with slides as a video. That one I'm pretty proud of. It was like a month, like 2 months after I started my site, I was already onto that. And yeah, next time we do the Great Work Launchpad episode 2, that was part of what I was gonna talk about, is like how I got started, try to inspire people to get them to understand how they got started. And yeah, so what I was gonna talk about, and we'll keep it for another time, is articles. People are shy, etc. Don't want to put your voice out, don't want to be on camera. Well, start with writing, and that's the best place you can start. And we'll talk about that next time. So, Brandon, you want to answer those questions about what's your top 3 Passio teachings, videos or teachings?
Top 3 would be his one would be Course of Natural Law Seminar, and I would put a documentary in like on that same level because one just a shorter version. 2 would be his most recent one, the one about socialism and communism. That right there has a lot of information, and it's sad that people don't grasp like how much work was put into that presentation. All the names and the help backgrounds. It was a lot of work, and that's important documentary to understand. That those two ideologies are nothing more but the satanic mindset. And then third, He did one. I want to say it was released last year, where he was talking about like the five things that were affecting the freedom movement. Forget what it was called, but I think he had did it for Derrick Brose's one of his things. But yeah, he was talking
Seven,
about
seven things.
not the seven deadly sins, but
No, it was the technology, something with technology, and the seven things that are seven things hurting the truth movement.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's possibly it. Hell, if I said five, then yeah, hell, it was seven. Hell, my bad. Hell, can't think of the actual title of it. It's crazy
I'm
because
looking at
they're
it
always
now.
playing in the background. Um,
It's like technology's critical role. That one in the war for freedom. I think it's that one. Technology's critical role in the war for freedom. Oh no, that was the green one. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. Why we're losing. That's the one. Why we're
yeah,
losing. Seven reasons the freedom movement is failing. That's the
yeah,
one. Yeah.
yeah. That one right there. Yeah,
That one
that
was
right
good too.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because a lot of people in the so-called community would be crying after hearing that one. Yeah, because that one hits hard.
Yeah. I like that technology in the past 2 years. Technology's critical role in the seven reasons we're failing. I like those two a lot. Yeah, very good stuff.
That's something that I've been learning recently. Because I wasn't very like technical, literate. But now I've grasped, like what he's been saying as far as how important it is to learn this technology and how much of a tool and how powerful it is, being able to create. Um, yeah, it's so important. It's literally like, you know, learning how to read and write, you know, have 150 years ago, have 100 years ago. You need to learn how to use this technology because without it, you pretty much can't create as far as, like what we're talking about. And you're going to be left in the darkness. So, yeah, it's very important.
Yeah. So we can talk about that next time. If you want to come back, This one's like an introduction on, I guess, the great work and inner work and how we first woke up.
Yeah.
And I guess the next episode, I'll make it on. We'll do how we got started. Actually, how what got us to actually start doing something in terms of making content specifically, but we could talk about if we have experience. Maybe we tried to help someone else who was already making content or things like that. That's getting involved as well. So we'll talk about that initiation into getting involved into taking action in some way to wake people to put out information or help other people put out information so that people can have more a slightly elevated percentage of chance of coming across the information, even though we might not be as popular as other people like Passio or whoever else. Um, your voice does have an effect. You never know who you could have an influence on, and what content you make could come across the ears or the eyes of someone who has never seen it before.
Yep. Months or years later down the road.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think we'll end it there. And if you want
Yeah.
to say anything else,
Um, hopefully I can come back next week. But yeah, like we were saying earlier, it's about installing that moral component, that moral principle. um that's where the focus is for me, and sadly not enough people, and that's what I'm going to keep talking about. Try to bring more people to that health awareness, that without that knowledge, without that truly understanding of what objective morality is, in reality, then there is no true cohesiveness, there is no true unity. there is no coming together. There is no harmony, and that's the main ingredient that people seem to be, have missing. So we need more of us to bring that true teaching and bring that light back out into the world, and that's what I want to keep doing.
Absolutely. We definitely got to keep being the beacons of light, doing that the light work, the true care, the light care, as opposed to the dark care, combating that force of dark care. And yeah, everyone needs to take on that responsibility, and that's part of what we can talk about later on the Great Work Launchpad, is the inhibitions that people have that prevent them from taking on that responsibility, and that refusal to take on that responsibility, because it is a burden, like I had in the Funnel 4 presentation, that bearing the responsibility of the atlas picture of, bearing that weight. And yeah, the Greater Arcana mentioned an article. That's another one you can read. I think it was called I think it was an article I did on playing on etymology related to bearing. If you search my site for bearing, I don't remember what it was called, but it was had to do with bearing the. Here, I'll just go look it up and then mention it as a instead of
Yeah,
just like
you
going half-assed
you did
and
have a
trying
lot
to.
of word etymology articles earlier on. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'll put the link in the chat. So it's called compassion, empathy, sympathy, and suffering, bearing good and evil. That's what it was. So this one I like. It was one of my earlier, like Brandon mentioned, I was doing more like just taking certain words and breaking them down and interconnecting them, correlating and corresponding them, and seeing what story I can tell. I've done that with like matter and mother, the story of our womb, something like that. That one's another article you can read. So I did a bunch of these, and characters and our character, how characters, when we write with characters, and our character has to do with morality and interrelating that. So I did a lot of these etymology things, and yeah. So I think this one on compassion, empathy, sympathy, suffering, bearing good and evil, that's a good one to read. It's not as long as Truth is Love, because that one's a hell of a long article. This one's shorter. So, yeah, that's a good read. I just remembered that. And Cryptic asks, what is the best way for me to get in contact with you? Well, if you go to my site, evolveconsciousness.org, at the top left, I have a contact button, and then you fill that out, and then the email will be sent to me, and I will receive the email, and then I can reply to the email. Or there's the One Great Work Warrior Telegram chat. There is the chat for the One Great Work Network, since whoever's on that network can contact me there. But the One Great Work Warriors Telegram, anyone can join that. I think Brandon has it in his tap link, and once you guys have that in your tap links, I think, do you have the invite to get there?
Uh, not through my tap link, but you can click on the One Great Work Warriors profile through my tap link, and it'll take it to the One Great Work Warriors link.
Cool. And I'll
Just because,
I'll
yeah, like I'm kind of antisocial. Uh, so
more than
yeah.
me? Shit. Yeah, I'll edit the live stream, and I'll put Brandon's I don't know if do you have it on OGWN? Because usually that's just what I put. I put the, because I know your your link there, and I just put the reference to your page.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll just put
yeah,
that, and then people can
yeah.
go through your social links there and find it, I guess.
Yeah, hell, I am linked through the One Great Word Network where people can just click on my profile to all my links.
Hey Theo, we're ending the stream. Yeah, you came in a bit late. Cool. Yeah, so I'll add your One Great Work, and people can find their way to the One Great Work Warriors. By the way, that's 6 people. There's Jim, Brandon, Chris, Derek, not me, Chris Jensen, and Jerry. I think I said 6.
And Rick,
Rick. I didn't say Rick. Okay, yeah, Rick. And Rick. Yeah, that's a podcast Chris Jensen has with them, having discussions once every month. So you can check that out on a link I'll provide from Brandon's link on One Great Work Warriors. So thank you everyone for coming in. Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate you being here. It helped. It helps to have someone on the stream rather than me trying to do stuff, and it'll draw out the content and make it longer. Because I would have just probably jumped into what I was going to do the next episode, into this one. But yeah, thanks for being there. Appreciate it.
yeah,
Appreciate everyone coming by. Crick, the Rip. Jesus, Crick. I was saying Crick, Rip.
and I'll do that
Crypt Rick.
sometimes too. Yeah, like I'll
Crypt
make that
Rick.
mistake sometimes
Theo.
too.
And we got a greater Arcanum. Marcella was there from the beginning. And I had someone else pop in. We had Russ. So thanks everyone for being there. And next week I might have the Law of Freedom Part 5 done. If not, we'll continue with Great Work Launchpad Episode 2 and getting into how we actually got started, and maybe give people ideas on how they can get started in launching themselves into the great work. So hopefully see you there next week, Brandon, and you can come on and discuss that. And if Theo or Crypt, Jesus Christ, I just say Rick. I don't know. I keep looking at the name and I keep saying Crypt, but Rick, Theo, or anybody else wants to come on and talk about their experience, they're more than welcome to as well. So until then, if you want to say something else, Brandon, we'll end it there.
Peace out. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. You have a good night. Take care. Peace.